that is what, as an HR organization, we have to build that culture in everybody around. That please respect people who have got innovative ideas and create a risk appetite in the organization. Greatest barrier to innovation is culture. HR can't create but can mold and facilitate creation of a supportive culture. That's what we just talked about. Greater leadership buy-in, increased change appetite, and sustained follow-through. I work for Fortis. Fortis is known to be a very fast-paced, fast-changing organization, so which keeps the entire organization in a bit of a flux. So HR has to play a very crucial role in creating that balance. Otherwise, because you're so fast-changing, people sometimes lose the focus. So that's where HR comes in and creates that focus, brings that focus back on the table, that guys, this is the direction we have to follow. That's the role I'm talking about. Who's the biggest force driving innovation at your company? This is again a Boston Consulting Group study. Look at the CEO, 44.5%. 44.5% means this is the top end. The CEO has to own the process. HR is not figuring here. It may be in the second column, others, maybe. So this is not a good sign. HR has to basically talk about the areas of innovation. HR has to lead the innovation. So we are not happy with this kind of a study. HR has to be figuring in this chart. That's what would position you as a business resource in an organization, as the way they call it, the strategic business resource. That is how you will enter that domain. It's a clear thing that we are not where we should be. Amazon's boss, Bezos, he says, I encourage our employees to go down the blind alleys and experiment. If you can increase the number of experiments you try from 100 to 1,000, you dramatically increase the number of innovations you produce. Not all of them may be successful, but most of them will succeed, and you'll have a multiplier effect. So please encourage, and this is a CEO talking. So when I end the presentation, just a few key takeaways. Repositioning HR, please focus and act. Sunil talked about willingness to act quickly. In other words, have a sense of urgency around everything you do. Don't procrastinate, don't wait. Do it now. Change the perception. That's what we started talking about. We must change the perception. And we have to do it. We really cannot live with those statements we read earlier. Grab the opportunity. Turn this ambiguity into opportunity. Respond and transform. We discussed this also. On the innovation mindset, just capturing what we just talked. Nurture an enabling culture. Again, an HR responsibility. Remember, the pendulum will swing back, so be there to catch the upswing. Build talent to ride the resurgence, because if you lose talent, you will miss the swing. Please find your Mount Everest. You can always find it. And be there to lead the way. And that's what I perceive HR, leading the way right from the front. Thank you so much for your patience.
So thanks, Rajiv, for putting the context of repositioning and innovative positioning of HR in this changing times. May I ask Ms. Gitanjali Pandit to give her perspective on the topic?
Complex topic it is.
It is.
Morning. My name is Gitanjali, and I am accountable for the human resource practice at Zee Media Corporation. We are India's largest media corporation. Don't have, what was the term, Rajiv? What kind of channels? Scary. We don't have scary channels unless you sometime catch a horror show on Zee Entertainment, but that's another company and not part of Zee Media. I had requested Ekta, if I could move up in the sessions because I need to take a flight and I'll be leaving immediately after, after the session today. Till I realized the topic, it reads strategic recombination, innovative positioning, and change architecture. And then I thought it might be better to give this entire session a skip because it needs a lot of interpretation to even figure out what's really required. I kind of held on to the one thing of high-performance organizations, and I said, okay, if high-performance organizations are being spoken of, then there is a common meeting ground, and perhaps I can share some thoughts with you, which will enable all of us to learn together what really high-performing organizations are about. How many of us are familiar with the term VUCA? V-U-C-A, VUCA. Yeah? Oh, very good. Complexity. Very good, very good. So I think we should have a round of applause for that. So VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And if I believe that because I have a degree of a certain kind, or if I have a certain kind of an academic background, then it'll automatically translate into desirable opportunity, top-of-the-line employment. Or if I'm part of the experienced workforce, if I believe that employers are going to continue with the kind of compensation trends that we've witnessed in the past, or that organizations will continue the way they have in the past, then we would all be in for either a slight shock or a big shock or an unpleasant surprise. But the fact is that today the world is changing and VUCA holds sway. So trying to define what a high-performance organization is, I actually ended up defining what a high-performance organization is not. I'd just like to share some of these characteristics of what a high-performance organization is not. It does not have poor hiring procedures, right? And talent acquisition, talent management, talent development are clearly a niche above, a cut above. So the hiring procedures in a high-performance organization would be extremely high on the value chain and on the value proposition. The high-performance organization does not have poor communication, which means that communication internally to all the stakeholders in the universe would be very streamlined, would be very aligned. And as I think both Sunil and Rajiv pointed out in their own way, the high-performance organization does not fear failure. This fear of failure is something that holds us back as individuals, and because individuals make organizations, it also tends to hold organizations back from fulfilling and realizing the highest potential. The organization culture is not poor. So therefore, it is aligned, it is enriched, it is not poor. It's very important that HR makes sure that the experience of the consumer, whatever that consumer is, in my case, it might be the news consumer. In Rajiv's case, it is the patient, the healthcare consumer, and also the telecom consumer, and so on. The consumer experience needs to be outstanding. And this becomes possible when employees are a part of the internal decision-making process, when individuals are encouraged to be a part of the internal decision-making process, so that there is a buy-in, there is an ownership, and there is a passion. Because without that, this element of customer or consumer excellence will not be created. Therefore, HR plays a very clear role in driving people, driving processes, and driving the business to create this a point of consumer excellence and consumer delight. So it's important that organizations are enabled through HR to strategize the hiring process, because we must now change the demographic. It is no longer the checklist that organizations used to have earlier. Oh, so there is somebody to be hired. Tell me, what kind of experience are you looking at? Acha, 6 years of experience. What kind of a degree should the person have? Kaun si industry se lena hai? And then there's a check, right? Hiring has to now move beyond that. And I think in many organizations it's already moving, but organizations are also conservative in their own way, so they don't always take that shift that perhaps we in HR become aware of much earlier. But then it goes back to the pyramid. Sunil, I think you showed that pyramid of HR. It goes back to that pyramid where if HR is a trusted advisor, then it's much easier to influence internal practices. It's much easier to create a buy-in for HR with other businesses. So we must make sure that, and HR does need to make sure that internal culture is not micromanaged. Metrics are specified, measurables are put into place, and then people are given the space and the empowerment to deliver on those. Because without that, if we continue to have extremely micromanaged teams, then neither innovation nor strategic thought, nor success, nor a competitive advantage, and nor will the organization become or move towards being a high-performing organization.